Okay, am I live? I think I'm live. Hi, everybody. Good morning. Um, I'm thinking this is working. It's my first time doing an actual live. I'm going to try and remember to keep looking at you guys. It's one of my weaker points is remembering to look at the camera, so I apologize. Caitlin already introduced me, but for those of you who don't know me, my name is Verena, and I am a Karen Pryor Academy graduate. I'm also a Family Paws parent educator and certified in pet loss companioning. I work 2 days a week at a vet clinic, just sort of veterinary assisting. I'm not an actual tech. And I live in rural northern BC. So I live in a tiny town called New Hazelton, BC. Good morning, Dean. So if you haven't heard of it, we are pretty far up north and quite small, but I like it here. I'm hoping not to have too many issues here tech-wise. I'm not the most savvy. I know that when you guys type comments, I'm about 20 seconds behind. So if you are chatting at me, be patient with me. And the only other minor issue I might have is I have a little foster kitty just for the weekend who is chilling out right now, but she, as babies do, tends to get zoomies. So she's sitting on my lap here, just this wee thing. But so you might hear some mewing at some point, and I apologize. I'm trying to keep her busy and calm, but such is life. So that's that. So I'm gonna start with an intro to clicker training. Then I am going to go over some of the kind of basic rules of clicker training, what we do and why. And then I'll go over some questions I've gotten over the last few days on the page. If you have other questions, you can type them in the comment bar. I'm going to try and keep an eye on it. If I happen to miss them, I will reply to them later. So you'll get either a reply via video now or a chat reply later. And then if I have time, I will go over some common questions that I get a lot as a clicker trainer, just kind of FAQs. So that's what this is going to look like. And we're going to aim for being done here around probably 9:45, hopefully, give or take. Okay. So what is clicker training? Number one. So for those of you who have kind of zero background in this at all, clicker training is a marker-based positive reinforcement training where we use a noise to mark when the dog or the learner, it can be any animal, does what I want. So in the most basic sense, if I'm teaching a puppy to sit, I say sit, puppy's bum hits the ground, I click, and then I give puppy their treat. A clicker, I like these guys. These are the eye clicks. And this is what it sounds like. That's it. It's not magic. There are several different kinds of clickers you can get. Use whatever you like. I just like the eye clicks. I find they're kind of ergonomically nice, so I buy them in bulk because I'm always losing them. So the purpose and function of clicker training is that it tends to help with communication between you and your dog. So if I am trying to teach a puppy to sit without a clicker, I say sit, I give a treat, I say sit, I give a treat. Puppy will learn the sit pretty much for sure. It's the same concept. But if I add a clicker in there, it allows me to be very clear to my puppy that that exact second was what I was looking for. So it enables us to be a little more precise in our communication and also really helps with some things like distance work. So in theory, I say to my dog, go lie on your bed over there, and they do. And then I, without a clicker, pull out a treat, puppy comes running back, gets their treat, no problem, but it becomes a little murky. Was that treat for going to the bed? Was that treat for lying down on the bed? Was that treat for coming back to me? Whereas if I have a clicker, go to your bed, puppy runs to bed, lies down, I click, they probably still run back to get their treat, but they know that's what earned it. So it's a little bit more precise. So that's kind of the nuts and bolts of it. It's not rocket science. It just helps with communication in general, and especially for things like distant behaviors, behaviors where maybe you have sort of a delay between where you can get the treat. So I'm going to go over just the basic rules of clicker training. So things I do no matter what. Number one is if you click, you treat. Pretty much period, the end. I will sort of preface this by saying rules, there are always exceptions to the rules. So if you are an advanced trainer and something I say, you're like, oh, I don't always do that, that's fine. But these are the basic rules for our clicker training in general and especially beginners. So if you click, you treat, period, the end. It can be a little hard when you're first starting with clicker training to get the mechanics down. So you sometimes click when you don't mean to, sometimes you're a little slow. Hi, Daniel. So if you click by accident, give your dog a treat anyways. I would much rather my dog get a free treat by accident than think that I'm a liar. So clicker is gold. If you click, you treat, period, the end. Only click once. I see a lot of people, often especially kids, it's sweet when they get excited about training, but rapid fire clicking. So dog sits, they get all excited and they click 3 times. Not the purpose, and unnecessary and probably confusing to your dog. So hi, I hope I say this right, Nagitsun, hello. So if you click once, follow it with a treat, always. Timing is important. Timing is really important in all dog training, whether you're using a clicker or not. But you want to be as precise as you can. So the clicker happens the second your dog does the behavior. So again, you say sit, puppy's bum hits the ground, click immediately. And then you want to follow that up with a treat as quickly as you can. Generally, like less than 3 seconds is ideal. You want to be pretty quick. So if you are potty training, for example, with a puppy, and you go outside, puppy pees where they're supposed to, you say, yay, and you go back inside, click and give them a cookie. Your puppy's going to love the cookie, but that is not effective potty training. It's too late. So you want to bring your clicker and treats with you. You get outside, puppy pees. The second they're done peeing, click and treat. Click when they're done peeing. If you click midway through, they'll often get distracted and stop. But stop peeing, click, treat, then go back inside. So timing matters. Timing's really important in all dog training. So those are kind of the rules. It's not that hard as the basics. The hard part, like I said, is getting the mechanics down. So being able to watch your dog, click when they do what you want, have your treats handy, give them to your puppy. One other rule I should mention before I forget is I like to make sure that my treats are kind of out of sight, out of mind. So whether that is in a pocket, in a treat pouch is kind of the standard, in a bowl on my counter. Oh, my kitten is chewing on my pen, sorry. If my treats are always in my hand, so I have clicker in one hand, treats in the other, it becomes very easy for puppy to only want to behave when they have treats in your hand. This goes with or without clicker training, but I like to remember as a rule, hi Cliff, as a rule, treats are a reward, not a bribe. So subtle difference, but important. So treat comes, you click, you get your treat from your bowl or your treat pouch, give it to your puppy, rather than treats in your hand, click, just hand it. Hi, Caitlin. Yes, I have done the bouncing ball game. That's a fun one for sure. So that's a good point from Caitlin, which is there is a way to practice your mechanics without doing it with your dog. If you want to sort of sharpen those up before you go to your dog in case you're going to make a lot of mistakes. So the bouncing ball game would be where often you'll have a friend because it's kind of a lot to be doing on your own, but throwing a ball in the air, and you want to click the second the ball gets to its highest point before it starts going down again. Other games, people will play all kinds of clicker games. A fun one, if you have a group of people, is you can sort of practice clicker training a friend. So don't tell them what you're going to have them do. And in your head, you say, I'm going to have you go turn on the light. And you can click for stepping towards the light, click for getting you closer to the light, click for touching the light switch, and eventually you have your friend turn the light switch and yay, they win. So all of these ways of practicing without being with your dog so you don't confuse them while you're getting used to it. Nothing wrong with that for sure. You can also practice just dogs in the other room. You're in your kitchen, you have your clicker, click, get a treat, put it on the counter, click, get a treat, put it on the counter. Just get used to those kind of movements. I do find though, once you're doing it, it comes pretty quickly. So people tend to adjust to it really quickly. So let me go over some of the questions I got specifically from people on the page. I apologize. I probably should have taken people's names so I can shout out to them when I'm answering these, but I did not. So I'll just go over the questions and some answers. So one question I got that was a really good one, I thought, was about dogs who are sensitive to sounds. So dogs who are maybe scared of the noise of the clicker. So I don't see this too often, but it does happen. And I find often for dogs who are a little bit noise sensitive, they adjust really quickly to the clicker because it's always paired with food and it's always paired with training time, which is fun time for a dog. So they tend to adjust pretty quickly. But that said, if your puppy is just really struggling, a couple options for those sound sensitive dogs. You could for sure do desensitization to the clicker. So the easiest way to do this, I think, would probably be to have it muffled, whether that's, thank you, whether that's in a pocket or you're farther away from your dog and maybe throwing treats, so that it's quieter. But easier than that, I think, would be to find some kind of quieter clicker. So I looked one up specifically. There is one I could find that maybe I'll link in the comments after, but it's called the COA multi-clicker, and it actually has volume controls on it. So you could turn it quieter. Before I knew that was a thing, my way lower tech way of doing this for noise sensitive dogs was I would just use a normal pen, and clicky pen, much quieter than a clicker. So that might be a good option for you too. And then the last option that I am going to touch on more later when I get to my sort of FAQs is the idea of a marker that is not a clicker. So I am sure a lot of you get this question, which is, can I use a word instead? Can I say yes? Can I mark with a word instead of a clicker? And so I'm going to get more into that later. But if your dog is really noise sensitive, you've tried quieter clickers, you've tried a pen, you've tried muffling the sound, and it's just too much, yes, you can use another marker, and we'll talk more about that in a little bit. Next question I got was the idea of using the clicker as a cue. So I'm going to try and explain this in a way that is not jargony. But so the question is, can I click to get my dog's attention? So click to get my dog to look at me. Or to come here, or to stop what they're doing, but to use it essentially as a cue rather than as a marker. And the answer to the question is, can you? Yes. Should you? No, that isn't the intended function of it. So what I would suggest instead is use your dog's name, puppy, puppy looks at you, click treat, puppy, puppy looks at you, click treat. If you are using your clicker as a cue, it is losing its function as a marker. So yeah, don't do it, I guess, is the answer to that one. Just pick an attention cue, whether that's your dog's name, whether that's over here, whether that's puppy, whatever it may be, then click, then treat. The clicker might get your dog's attention as sort of a secondary function because they know it's associated with treats, but that's not what it's used for. Okay, next question I got, puppy nipping. Can we clicker train puppy nipping? So the answer to this one is going to depend a lot on your trainer, which is to say, yes, you can. Puppy nipping is not one I actually typically use a clicker for, and I am pretty pro clicker. I find with puppy nipping, it is most effective to try and sort of head them off at the pass. So don't let it get to the point necessarily where I would have to be training it. I lean heavily on management for this one. So let's go for a walk. If I know when I get home from a walk, puppy's going to be zoomy, then as soon as I get home, I have a stuffed Kong ready or a bone ready, I give it to my puppy. Or if I know puppy tends to get zoomy every evening around 4:30, at 4:25, I'm going to have a tug toy ready or the leash ready, and we're going to have an activity to sort of head that off at the pass. And then in those instances where your puppy is nipping you, which they will, I have a Doberman. I remember her puppy stage and it was horrifying. So when you are being mouthed on, I tend to try the 3 strikes in your out rule. So redirect to a toy, redirect to a chew, 3rd strike, I'm going to just walk away. I find that tends to be the most effective way with puppy nipping, simply because it's normal that they're nipping, right? They're teething. It's fun. Puppies play with their teeth all the time. So to just kind of try and work with that as they're getting through that puppy stage, I find easier. But if you want to try and introduce your clicker for puppy nipping, a couple of common games people will play. Obviously, there's teaching an out or a drop it that you can do. So puppy, you can start it with a toy, but it could be your clothes, your pant leg, whatever your puppy's getting. You say you're out or you're off. Hopefully they do it. You may have to bribe with a treat for the first few. Click, puppy gets treat, and eventually they learn their off cue. Another one I've seen people play is a game of kind of hands around the face. So puppy is just hanging out, hopefully not in a super mouthy mindset in this moment, and you just sort of have your hands around their face. And when they don't respond to it, because we're hopefully in a calm moment, click and treat. And hands around the face, click and treat, hands around the face, click and treat. And eventually maybe hands petting their nose, click and treat, and just build up to hands around your face are not for biting. So you could for sure incorporate those games along with your management and prevention. And a lot of puppy nipping also comes down to sort of checking off those check boxes of why is my puppy mouthing right now? Are their gums sore because they're teething? If so, I can give them something cold to chew on. Are they bored? If so, I can give them a stuffed Kong or we can go for a walk. Are they tired? This is a big one. I get a lot. People think that if their puppies are nipping, they need to keep them active, but often, just like toddlers, they are just tired. So nap time, time to crash out. And normally you can sort of work through it that way and they just age out and we thankfully just move on. So that's puppy nipping. Last question I got from the page so far was someone was saying they're clicker training their puppy and their puppy is sitting before they are asked to do so. So they've practiced their sit, puppy's so excited, and now puppy's just offering that sit without being asked. So this isn't really a clicker training specific question, but it brings up the question of what do you do if your puppy is sort of preempting your cues. So a couple of thoughts on this one. One is, especially for a sit, I don't think that it is the worst thing if a sit is your puppy's default offered behavior. I'm not saying you necessarily have to treat it every single time, especially as they get older, but having a puppy who default sits when they want something is actually fairly polite. So with that one, I don't worry about it too much. But generally, the concept that we're talking about is something called stimulus control, which is only do it when I ask you to, otherwise it doesn't count. And this is not an easy concept for dogs, but it can be an important one, especially for behaviors that can be nuisance behaviors. So people who have put barking on cue or speak, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Shake a paw, I see this a lot too. People get real excited about teaching their puppy paw, and then puppy wants anything and they're just pawing at you. And you kind of want that puppy to learn speak only counts if I say speak, Paw only counts if I say paw. Please stop pawing at me. So a couple ways you can practice this. My preferred way is let's say we're doing sit. I will rapid fire sit cues. So sit, click, treat, sit, click, treat, sit, click, treat, sit, click, treat. And then I will just put a very tiny delay. And I want my delay to be so little that my dog basically can't mess it up. I don't want them to even have time to sit, but it'll be sit, click, treat, and then I wait half a second, and then sit, click, treat. And then maybe on the next one, I wait a full second, and then sit, click, treat. And my goal is to sort of build a little bit duration between my cues and have my puppy paying attention and waiting to hear what I'm going to ask them to do rather than just, behavior vomit, throwing everything they know at me to see what works. If we mess up and I wait too long, puppy sits, puppy throws themselves into a down, puppy starts pawing at me, just trying to guess what I want, I normally just reset, walk a few steps, try again, cue my sit, wait a few seconds. Another more advanced game I like for stimulus control is teaching my puppy to differentiate between cues. So if I have a puppy who knows both sit and down quite well, I want to make sure they know these behaviors so it's not too frustrating. I will randomize it. So sit, click, treat, sit, click, treat, down, click, treat, sit, click, treat, and just mix it up which one you're going to cue. But again, if they get it wrong, just walk a few steps, try again. You don't need to say no. You don't need to say you're wrong. You don't need to punish your dog. You just walk a few steps, try again. But essentially, I want them learning to actually listen. You can't just guess what I'm going to say. Listen to what I'm saying, wait a sec, and when I give it to you, then do it and do it right. So those are two games I like, sort of building duration between my cues and then alternating between very fluent behaviors, so behaviors my dog knows really well, and randomizing it so they can't guess which I'm going to give them. So that is how I would start with that. But again, a default sit I don't think is the worst thing in the world to have. Okay, I'm going to remind you all now before I get into my FAQs that if anyone has questions, you can throw them in the comments. I am watching them. So if anything comes up as I'm talking, feel free to just throw it at me. But common questions I get about clicker training. So one is, if I'm using a clicker, do I have to use it forever? So if I am clicker training, am I going to be here 10 years from now with my senior dog who's very well behaved, clicking all the time? And people are very worried about this. So with clicker training, I tend to liken the clicker to training wheels when you're learning to ride a bike. Once you know how, you don't really need them anymore. So this is not kind of for the dog as a whole, this is per behavior. So when I am teaching a new behavior, I am generally using my clicker. Once my dog knows the behavior, I can probably fade my clicker and I don't need it anymore. The sort of general rule of thumb I like to give my clients is if you are willing to bet me $50 that you say sit and your puppy is going to sit, you can stop using your clicker for sit. If you say to me, if I say, will you bet me $50 your puppy will sit? And you say, probably, yeah, if we're inside and there are no other dogs around and she's in the right mood, good work, nice practice, but not there yet. Keep using your clicker. So I use it as we are learning the behaviors, and then once they're kind of fluent, we can fade it. And then the second portion to that question is always with regards to treats and feeding treats. So if we go back to my very first rule of clicker training, which is if you click, you treat, that holds true even once your dog knows their behaviors. So if you say to yourself, my puppy really knows sit, and I don't want to have to give them a treat every single time they sit anymore, that's fine, but then don't click when you're not going to give them a treat. So sit, your puppy sits, you've decided for this one, they don't need a treat, you're just going to move on. That's fine, but just don't click for it. If you click, your puppy gets a treat. So as your puppy gets more fluent in behaviors, yes, you can fade your clicker. Yes, you can fade your treats. But don't be clicking if you're not going to treat. So don't fade your treats and not the clicker if you click your treat. Golden rule. Okay. Another question, sort of going back to the sound sensitive dogs. So can I use a marker that is not a clicker? This is probably one of the most common questions I get. Sorry, kittens fussing. This is one of the most common questions I get. People like to use the word yes a lot. And there is nothing wrong with having a marker that is not a clicker. It can be anything, and that is just fine. The kind of caveats and thoughts I like to give people. One is you kind of want it to be a novel sound. Ideally, I don't want it to be something my dog hears out of context. So with a word yes, for example, if I am chatting with a friend and I use the word yes a lot, my dog may be hearing that and it is out of a training context. And that can be confusing and that can sort of lower the value of that marker for your dog. And so for that reason, I really like my clicker, because you're never going to hear someone click by accident. You're not going to be chatting with a friend and they're just clicking at you. You're not going to be walking down the street and a random person clicks. It just doesn't happen. So it's a novel sound. So if you want to use a word, a lot of people, lose their clickers, or going back to the mechanics, they can be a little tricky to manage treats and your dog and your clicker, especially if you have a dog with behavioral issues who's reactive or something. And so your hands are full and they're barking and you're panicking. I get it. So if you're going to use yes, I often say try and use a tone that you might not use in everyday life. A lot of people do a high-pitched yes, or something like that. Or pick a word that you may not use every day. So I use yay. I think Caitlin does too, if memory serves. It can be literally anything, but pick a word that is not something you might be saying in everyday conversation, or pick a tone you might not be saying. The other option for people who can do this, I don't know why I struggle with this so much. Some people can make a really nice click with their mouth. So like I'm not very good at it. I hate it. But if you're good at that, you can do that. One less thing to carry. So yes, you can use other markers, but make sure it's something novel that your dog is not hearing out of context all the time, so that you can follow that golden rule of if you click, you treat, and your dog knows you're not a liar. Okay, thank you. So, yeah, other markers. So, and then there is the option too. There are clickers that are different ones. Like I said, I really like my iClicks. I find them the easiest to use. They're kind of ergonomic. And you can even put a little bungee cord on it, wrap it around your wrist, put it around your neck, that kind of thing. Some people really like box clickers. I don't love them personally, but if you do, that's just fine. They're little sort of square boxes that have almost like a piece of tin in them. If you have a sound sensitive dog, they are typically louder, so don't go that route. But yeah, so I mean, you can play around with clickers, find one you like better, or pick a non-clicker marker, but just be mindful of those things in that novel sound. Hopefully that makes sense. Sound off if it doesn't in the comments. Non-food reinforcers. So I get this question a lot too. Non-food reinforcers means, can I train my dog with something other than treats? I don't want to use treats all the time. I get this from everything from people who think maybe using treats in training isn't great. This is kind of an old school way of thinking. To people who are worried about their dog's weight, to dogs who are not food motivated, to dogs with health issues. I get this. I had a diabetic foster dog a little while ago, so we had to be pretty careful with his food. So there are a lot of reasons why people don't want to use food in training. And so the complicated answer to this question is yes, you can use something other than food if you have to, but I caution against it for a few reasons. So with regards to food, just to start with, you can use your dog's kibble if they are food motivated. So if your dog loves their meal and you're worried about their weight, just use their meals for training, and there's nothing wrong with that. So they don't need to be getting a ton of extra calories. You can use their food for their training. If you have a not very food motivated dog like me, you might need to up the ante. So we use chicken, we use diced up hot dogs, we use cheese is always a hit. But if you have a dog who is not food motivated at all, doesn't like it, a lot of people want to use play as a reinforcer. I see this a lot. So the short answer is you can train with anything that is reinforcing to your dog. So if your dog loves play, yes, you can train with play. If your dog loves praise, yes, you can train with praise. But I get a lot of people wanting to do it because they think it's right, not because it's what their dog loves. So you have to be able to honestly say to me when you're training, my dog would prefer me to say good boy than a piece of cheese. And if that is true, then sure, you can click and say good boy. I don't know if I've yet met that dog. So food is pretty universally liked and needed for our animals, and tends to be more reinforcing than praise. I do see a lot of play motivated dogs. My Doberman is one of them. She would take a game of tug over a steak any day of the week. So we do use play as a reinforcer sometimes. The way that I am sort of mindful of this is, first of all, with regards to just repetition. Let's say I need to do a new behavior 100 times for my dog to learn it. It is much faster to sit, click, treat, than sit, click, play a game of tug. Okay, drop it, sit again, click, play a game of tug. So I can get my reps in and get my dog fluent much faster with food than I can with play. And then the other thing I consider also is what sort of level of arousal am I looking for my dog? So how amped am I okay with them being? If I am working on something like recall, where I want it to be so exciting and so fun, just come back to me, this is a great game, running back to mom is always fun. Play can be a great reinforcer for that if your dog is play driven. So they're running off in the woods, having a great time, or for you city folk, maybe at the dog park. I call them, they come back, yay, what a good puppy, and we play a game of tug or I throw a ball. That can work really well for play driven dogs. For things like a stay or relax on your bed or leash walking, things where I kind of want my dog to be a little more chill, I tend to avoid using play because play will inevitably amp my dog up, and I want them to sort of be a little more mellow. So if I am training something that's pretty chill, I will defer to food. If I am training something that is super fun and amped and exciting and running and being excited is fine, play's a little easier for that. But as a rule, I would say if it's a new puppy or a new dog to you, start with food. It's faster, it's easier, it is very nearly universally liked. And then as you get sort of more confident and you learn your dog and you figure out what they're motivated by, if they're motivated by something other than food, you can start playing with that once you guys have that bond kind of built, once you actually know what your puppy's into, once they have some fluent behaviors, and once you're sort of working on the more advanced stuff. So yeah, non-food reinforcers are fine. They're harder, they take longer, they're more complicated, and they're not always universally liked. Whereas I have yet to meet the dog where once we have started training, they are not willing to work for a piece of cheese or a piece of chicken. Food is intrinsically needed for our animals. So that's my thoughts on that. So yeah, start with food. It's fast, it's easy. All dogs like it pretty much. All dogs need it for sure. It can be their kibble if they're food driven. Introduce other concepts later. Last question I get a lot of, I think, maybe more will come to me, but the last one I'm sort of thinking of off the top of my head is, are there, can you train any animal with a clicker, or is it just dogs? This one's sort of just a fun one for the training nerds out there, not maybe relevant to training your puppy. But it is kind of adorable and fascinating to watch when you can train any animals this way. And I bring it up because I do get some people, I find especially people who come from a correction heavy background in training, or people with those big tough breeds, like Dobermans, like Malinois, like Huskies. I see a lot. Any of those breeds that people sort of have those stereotypes of, saying, well, clicker training or force-free training might work for your golden retriever, but I have a tough breed. I can't. It's different. So I always like to counter with anything can be trained with force-free positive reinforcement, up to and including humans, down to cats. I know a trainer, Julie, back in Ontario. Cannot remember her last name off the top of my head, but she has an Instagram account, Cat School, which is super fun to follow. If you check it out, she trains her kitty Jones to do all kinds of things and runs classes. We have a trainer on page here, Sarah Russell, who I know, who works a lot in feline behavior, and I know trains her cats to do all kinds of things. Ken Ramirez, who is the chief training officer for Karen Pryor Academy now, and a wonderful speaker. If you guys ever get the chance to read his books or listen to him on podcasts, he's just mind-blowing how smart he is. But he has the ranch now, which is owned by Karen Pryor Academy, but he has, I want to say he has goats and sheep and alpacas and of course dogs, and trains all of them with clicker training. And all of us Karen Pryor grads, when we're going through school, we have to train a non-dog animal. So I took the easy way out and trained a kitten because I fostered kittens at the time and still do, clearly. But people train all kinds of things. I saw people training fish to swim through hoops. So you can train anything. Your dog is not so special that it can't be trained this way. And it's fun and they love it. And a fun side note, a lot of trainers, to sort of hone their skills, train chickens and go to what we call chicken camp, which I've done and is a delight. So you can train anything. So if your dog is struggling, if your dog is quote unquote stubborn or tough or aggressive or anxious, you can still use these methods. They work. I promise you. You don't need to use harsher methods just because you have a different breed. And my Doberman is sort of the proof in the pudding for that one, I guess. So I think that's all I had on my list here. So maybe just because I know your timing is a little behind, I'm going to give everyone a few seconds here in case any questions pop up in my comments. And if not, we'll wrap it up there. But I'm going to give you guys 30 seconds or so in case, because I know there's a delay there. And thank you all for tuning in bright and early on a Saturday, although I guess it's probably later for some of you since I'm on the West Coast. But either way, I appreciate you giving up your weekend to listen to me ramble on about training, because it's what I love. So it's nice to be able to share that with you folks. Yeah, and for those of you, I know not everyone is live, but for those of you who are checking this out later, because the stream will be, I think, available pretty much forever or indefinitely in the group files we have one going for the lives. I'll try and keep an eye on the comments. So if something comes up and you're watching this down the road, leave a comment, tag me. I'm always happy to answer training questions, behavior questions, especially clicker training questions. And as we mentioned at the beginning, I am an admin on the group here, so I'm around a lot. So if you ever need me or have questions, just tag me. I'm here. I check the page every day, several times a day, maybe too many times a day. So I'm around. Okay. All right. Well, on that note, I guess we will wrap up. So happy Saturday, everyone. Enjoy your weekend. I hope you have nice weather wherever you are. I hope you're handling quarantine, or for our essential workers out there, handling the craziness of the workforce right now just fine. And have a good weekend. Thanks, everyone.